Hi everyone, and welcome to our series where we interview computer science faculty about their job search and interview experience to help future faculty candidates with their job search. And today we are here with Gagandeep Singh, who will start as a tenure-track assistant professor at UIUC starting from fall 21. Gagandeep's research lies at the intersection of artificial intelligence and also programming languages. And with that, welcome Gagandeep, and thanks a lot for joining.
Thanks for the introduction and thanks for having me.
Yeah, first of all, can you tell us a bit about yourself and also your career path?
I will start with my undergrad, which I did in India at the Indian Institute of Technology, Patna. So I finished my undergrad in 2012. Then I moved to ETH Zurich. I did masters at ETH from 2012 to 14. Then I did PhD till 2020 with Marcus Bushel and Martin Vechev at ETH Zurich. My research basically is at the intersection of programming language and artificial intelligence, as you mentioned. And there are three main themes at the moment. The one theme is program analysis for programs in general, where you use this elegant framework of abstract interpretation to prove or disprove the absence of bugs in programs such as buffer overflow and whatnot. So that was actually the first theme of my PhD. The second theme was certified artificial intelligence, where you use program analysis techniques and formal methods for proving the safety and resilience and the robustness of neural networks. And the third theme, which I started looking into towards the end of my PhD and I have been more looking in recently at VMware, is ML for systems, which basically means how to use machine learning for designing systems. So nowadays, a lot of systems, they previously used to work with some handcrafted heuristics, but people are realizing that using machine learning techniques can yield better performance. So these are the three broad themes, and now I'm also looking into how these different things can be combined with each other.
And it seems you're doing quite interdisciplinary work. You just mentioned basically related to PL, then machine learning, and now it seems also systems. So how did this affect your interviewing process? Because I believe that people had problems putting you in a kind of standard bucket or so, right?
Yeah. So I believe nowadays things are also getting very interdisciplinary. So in many departments, they are not looking for it. Like they do sometimes they do look for a specific candidates in a specific area, but they are also looking for people who have a broader uh, overview in terms of their research. And then whenever you go for faculty interviews, etc., uh, you meet people and they are looking for collaboration. So that kind of helps because hey, you meet somebody from systems or databases, you can try to make a connection about ML for systems. You meet somebody from artificial intelligence or more ML person, then you can talk about this certified AI and whatnot. And of course, I have my core area of PL, which is like program analysis and whatnot. So I think that's actually something positive to have this kind of broader overview.
Mm-hmm. And you also just mentioned VMware. So was this something that you started as a kind of a gap year, or was this also after accepting the position at UIUC?
This was also a product of the circumstances because, as you know, we were in the middle of pandemic, so it would have been not that easy to get the students right away. So that's also a trend that many people that get hired take, because this 1 year gap at VMware is good because you get to see what happens in the industry, and sometimes you uncover interesting problems somewhat related to what you were doing, but you get a better flavor in the industry. And this gap year, it also allows you to recruit the students, to actually have students before you start. So for me, overall, I think this is a win-win situation because you get to learn new things in the 1 year. Like mostly I have been exploring the ML for systems part here, while also being able to like have students ready, like students starting as a PhD students uh, when I start next month.
I see. And did you also already work on funding proposals during this time?
Yes, so I have been working on applying for funding proposals. So actually, the deadline for one of them is on Sunday.
Oh,
So
I see. So fingers
yeah,
crossed.
fingers crossed. But for like UIUC, they do provide enough funding in the beginning. So you can fund, at least in my case, you can fund uh, 3 students for 2 years or 2 students for 3 years. So at least in the beginning, I have 2 students. So first 2 years we are secured, and hopefully we will be having grants approved meanwhile.
And how did you bring this up to the institution? Is this something that institutions are typically flexible about, or
About the grant.
about the starting date?
Yeah, so they gave me choice. They gave me choice whether I want to start in August 2020. One more thing was that so I got this offer in May or June or mid-May. So one more thing would have been if I started in August, because of the pandemic situation, getting the visa would have been complicated. So it was just not feasible to start in August 2020 anyways. So then the other options was like February 2021 or August 2021. So then I said that if I uh, do February 2021, then it's like basically you are doing nothing, not much for 6 months, like you are not learning new. So why not like start in August 2021 when you can, the situation with the pandemic will improve. You can get the visa, and then you can also have 1 year of working somewhere else other than ETH.
And what kind of advice do you have for other uh, future faculty candidates that are considering to do such a gap year?
I would say that go somewhere where you can learn something new. And for me, it was very important that I get an experience of industrial research, but then it is also research oriented, where I can also get to learn new things and also publish, also like keep the academic work going. So VMware, I talk with other places as well, but VMware, I think it provided me the best balance because here I can I can do the academic work as well and also work with the product team, and that kind of gives me like a balance in the sense that I can keep the industrial work going, but I mean the academic work going, but also push things for the actual product that's used in the industry.
Okay, makes sense. Will you already be teaching classes for the first semester?
Yeah, so I'm teaching next semester. I designed a course called Logic and AI. It would be like advanced level course for the graduate students, where we will be looking into how. So there was like first wave of AI where people were just using logic to make rules, uh, how an agent should behave, but that was not scalable because it cannot deal with uncertainty. And the second wave was about data-driven approaches. You just show data at each other, and that kind of approach works well for uncertain behavior, but does not have any guarantees of the first wave. So the third wave is actually combining logic with this data-driven approaches, and that's what we will be looking into this.
Mm. And I assume that you also will have a teaching release at some point. So what were your considerations for using this?
Yeah, so I will get 1 semester where I don't have to teach. So currently, because of some visa issues, I'm maybe planning to take this in the fall of next year. Uh, so that because I got the H1B visa, but I have to get the stamp, and sometimes this stamp can take a while. So I will go to India. That's my plan in December after this semester finishes, and then maybe I will not teach next semester, the semester afterwards, and stay in India till I get the stamp.
Yeah, perhaps a more general question. How would you characterize the academic landscape in the Midwest?
Well, to be fair, because of the pandemic, I have only been once to UIUC, and that was like 1 month ago. But overall, I would say it's very strong. So, of course, there are issues that sometimes students don't like the weather, or they say that the landscape is like not the academic landscape, but the actual landscape is a bit boring compared to California, where I'm currently, or other places, or Colorado. But I think it's overall very strong. The department at UIUC, I interviewed at other places as well. The students I met were very strong. I have already been working with some PhD students. They are all quite technically strong, and the department in itself is quite collaborative. So I have already been collaborating with two faculty, actually three of them, and the, the guys are just always available to help. And actually, what I realized is that they hire you because they want you, but at some other departments, I have seen that they hire people to compete with each other. So also, I experienced that there is not much hierarchy going on. So that's always uh, something good as a junior faculty.
That sounds nice. I mean, you were in Switzerland for most of your career, as you already mentioned. And what kind of advice would you have for Europeans that basically interview for the top institutions in the US? What are the things to look out for?
So one thing I noticed, especially in our one of the uh, focus areas I mentioned, certified AI, right? So there the issue is that there are many groups in the US that also work on the same topic. So I felt that at certain points, ETH is in Europe, and then we sometimes get we are a bit far from the US, right? So you can get excluded. Uh, if you are in US, you just meet each other more often. You don't have to fly that much, and then like you can be better connected. So that's something to keep in mind. So what I did, I scheduled some visits before I was going to apply to the departments where I really wanted to go, and to get more familiarity with the department, and to also get visibility so that more people in the department know about me. So that's something that can really help if you're coming from Europe. Because if you're in US, it's easier to just schedule a visit. You can just say, hey, I'm traveling here, and then you just go there and talk, give a talk. Of course, now with the virtual setting, it's better. But in my case, when I was applying, everything was physical. So I just made 1 or 2 weeks where I go around the US and give talks at different places.
Ah, okay, that's great advice. Did you schedule this as like after a conference, or did you just basically as some kind of holiday? Yeah, not really a holiday, but a standalone visit.
It was a mixture of both. So I was in the US for some conference in May of 2019, and then I also told like, hey, I'm in the US. Let's have some talks. And people are usually willing to like help you with this to arrange talks, etc. And they are like willing to like also host you. So that's not a problem. And then also in August, I was passing around Canada, and then I said, hey, can I come to give a talk because I'm in the area? So that usually helps.
And as a follow-up question, so how important do you think is it to collaborate and network to obtain a position?
I think in my case, I did not have any external collaboration besides my professors at ETH. I would say that visibility is important. So if there is somebody in the department that is very excited about you, it's not a guarantee that you will get it, but it helps with the interview process that they are very positive about you. So it's good if you can get that kind of connection with collaboration. It's good. And with networking also, it's possible to build such connection. Basically, I think it helps if you have somebody really wanting you in the department. If nobody is excited about you, then it gets hard.
Okay. Yeah. let's continue chatting about the preparation phase. There, as a first question, how did you decide for which institutions you apply? And then also for roughly how many institutions did you apply for?
So I, of course, applied for all top 20 departments, and among them, I filtered out the ones that were looking for specific positions where I could not fit. For example, if somebody was looking specifically for a candidate in quantum or human computer interaction, that's not my area. So I filtered out those locations where I did not fit. So overall, roughly, I think it was around 15 places I applied. I interviewed at 6 of those.
And I assume most places were in the US or all of them?
Yeah, they were in the US, all of them.
Did you ever consider also research positions in industry?
So that's something I had not originally planned, but it came up. Also, what was happening in my case was that a lot of universities, they were freezing hiring, or they were just hiring less because of the pandemic. I know many departments, they just like abruptly ended their faculty search process at the time. So then I also said that applying for industrial research positions uh, is a good idea as well. So then I also applied for those.
I see. Okay. And how did you structure your research statement?
So the research statement, so as I mentioned, my two broad themes are about like certified AI and program analysis. So basically, I had a introductory paragraph where it's very important, when you go for these kind of interviews, you have to give a sense of what you are solving, because an expert in programming language or artificial intelligence will know what problem you are solving or how hard they are. But if you actually want to get an offer or get somebody excited, it should be accessible to also persons that are not available with that are not like familiar with the research, right? For example, somebody in theory or somebody in something else, so you have to kind of mention that the problem you are solving is hard or challenging. So in my case, like the program analysis in general, like an decidable problem and whatnot, so it's important to give a flavor of the problem that you have solved are important, that people are interested in those. They will have some societal impact, and they are not trivial to solve. So in the first paragraph, I tried to basically convey this idea that these have been very hard problems people have been trying to solve for the last many years, and we managed to get some progress in that direction. And then I had in the two directions, program analysis, certified artificial intelligence, I had text which expanded on those, basically what progress we have made. And then I also listed what are the future directions in both areas. I also I looked at some of the research statements from the faculties that have been like successful before. So I also looked at their templates, how they structure things. So that also helped. Mm-hmm. Many of these are available online, so they are like really accessible.
And as a related question, so how did you structure your top talk? And also assume it basically requires, I mean, in order to understand your contribution, one requires a bit of background in formal reasoning and mathematics in general. So how did you basically approach this?
Yeah, so as with other things, it's kind of a balance, right? So you cannot make the talk too high level, then everybody will think that it's like trivial what you do, because in the audience, the people that are seeing your talk have seen the talk of the other people as well. So you have to give them a sense of in the talk that something non-trivial is going on, that is not easy to get. So it was important for me to put at least some examples where you see that we are applying some non-trivial algorithms that have been designed by me, while also you cannot make it completely inaccessible in the sense that a general audience does not get what problem you are solving. So what I tried to do was to, in the beginning, give a high level idea of the problem we are solving, and also the complexity of the problem and what are the challenges. And then I go into the technical parts. And the technical parts, I did have like certain feedback that, yeah, it could be inaccessible to some of the faculty, but it's also important. I also got that it was important that people see that everything is just not straightforward, that you tweak something here and there and you get the result.
Makes sense. And regarding the teaching statement, so how important was your teaching experience at ETH to write this?
I think ETH PhD students teach a lot more than the ones in the US, because in ETH you almost have to teach every semester, and in US it's like 1 or 2 semesters you can choose when you want to teach. So I would say that I had a much more teaching experience than other candidates based in the States. That really helps. Of course, it helps in writing the teaching statement, in the sense that I have taught a variety of courses at ETH, ranging from how to write fast numerical code to blockchain seminars, right? And this also helps not only with teaching statement, but also because you have a broader overview. So now I can even go and talk with somebody that is working in security on blockchains. Of course, I'm not an expert, but at least if I talk with them, it's completely like that I just don't know anything, right? So that kind of helps, because sometimes you have this one-on-one interviews, and you go for lunch afterwards, and the lunch can be with somebody completely out of your area. And then to start a conversation, I think this kind of broad experience helps.
After you finished preparing your job talk, how many dry runs did you do, or did you also do any kind of mock interviews to prepare for the one-on-ones?
Yeah, so the ETH department really helped me with that, and I'm really grateful to all the people that helped me. I did one big dry run with the ETH software and programming language group. So I got a lot of feedback, and that really helped solidify my presentation. And also then I did individual dry runs with 2 or 3 more people. I did mock interviews with the ETH professors. I think, if I remember correctly, 4 of them. That really helped me, because I would say at some of these mock interviews, I got harder questions than like I got in the actual job interview. So that was really helpful.
Mhm. As part of your papers, you also often released some artifacts that also had much impact. So did you also incorporate this into your statements in some way, or your job talk?
Yeah, it's important, because people, like anybody that comes for a job interview in academia, has, like, if they get invited to top departments, they have done great research, right? And in many departments, they sometimes want to see if you provided any artifacts that people are using. So that was actually one of the strengths of my application, that I had some artifacts available online that are used by people in industry and academia. So I was highlighting this a lot. And I also got questions about how do I maintain them, and who contributes to this, and other things. So people were really happy to see that there are artifacts around that work and that people use.
Yeah, great. We chatted now a bit about preparation, so let's continue with interviewing. And there, I mean, you already mentioned that you interviewed with 6 top universities. And were all of these preceded by phone interviews, or were these some of these direct invitations?
If I remember correctly, 2 of them were phone interviews. And in one of these phone interviews, again, I would say that I got harder questions than when I went to the university. And then I asked them, like, hey, your phone interview was harder. They said, yes, we were preparing you for like this visit. So yeah, it was like this.
Do you still remember some of these harder questions that you received? Or, I mean, it has been quite a while, I guess.
Harder question was more like grilling about the limitations of what we are solving, right? So certified AI, when we do, people want guarantee for all the inputs, but we cannot provide for all the inputs. We provide for a interesting subset. So basically grilling about whether this is possible or not. I think in these cases, if there are limitations of your work, it's better to accept it than sometimes make up something to sound, uh, how should I put it, smart. So whenever it came up that, yeah, it was very clear that there are some limitations of what we are doing, I accepted it. Or if somebody asked me about something that I thought I could not, I was not an expert in answering, I just did not try to make up something, right? And people appreciate these honest answers than like making up something, and then it's very clear that you don't know, and then you are talking something like that you are not an expert on.
Right, makes sense. And I mean, from that, it seems that also already during these phone interviews, many of the questions you received, they were specifically tailored for you, not very generic ones, right?
Yes. So sometimes when I start talking about what, so one of the more important questions you get in the job interview, phone or like in person, is what is next, right? Or what is the most important problem you want to solve in the future. So when you start talking about this, you get more questions about like how are you going to go about it, and what's possible and what is not. So some people in the phone interviews, they leave it at some point, but then the other people, they just want to get more and more details whether you have a plan or not. So I remember like the motivation of certified AI sometimes is like self-driving car. You want to make it reliable, and then somebody starts saying like, "Hey, you just verified neural network. What about the car?" So then you have to reason not only about the neural network but also the other components. And then they went into the detail of, hey, how will this specification look like end to end for the self-driving car, and how would you go about like designing a method like to verify that it works for a number of cases in the environment and whatnot. So sometimes it's important that when one talks about what they want to do in the future, is not at a very high level. You don't need to like tell exactly, hey, this algorithm I'm going to apply, but at least have an idea of if you're going to solve something, how you are going to go about it.
Yeah, so what was your strategy for scheduling the interviews?
Yeah, I think there was no strategy. I just did first in, first out. Basically, if somebody comes, and then I look at the next available date, and then I just go with it.
I see. Then what was the structure of a typical visit?
So it depends upon the department. At UIUC, for example, everything was done in one day, uh, and at other places it could be 2 days. But overall, it just involved you meet some people before the talk, then you have a talk for 1 hour, then you go for a lunch or a dinner, and then after lunch you have more talks, then you meet the people. So with every visit there is a host, right? So you meet the host over the dinner, and then you can have informal discussion, formal discussion. An important part to me is not only answering questions, but people also appreciate if you ask questions to them. And especially if you meet department heads, etc. I observe that it is more about you asking questions. You have to kind of show interest that you are willing to live in the city. So important to ask questions about, uh, let's say, if you plan, so ask questions in the direction where you show your intent that you want to live in the city. So that was important. And then it depends upon the people you meet. Sometimes, so what I did was that I went through, so I got the schedule of uh, all the people I was meeting in advance, and then I tried to go through their. I'm not familiar with all the people I meet, and then with the people I'm I'm not familiar with, I go through their research pages, and then I see what is the theme of their research, and then I try to make connection. Sometimes it is just not possible to make a connection because we are just too far away, and then I just do not try to make anything artificial, and then we talk about their research and my research, and with the people there is possible, it is possible to make a connection. I try to like ask them questions. Hey, I think I'm solving this problem. Maybe it connects with some of the broader theme of your research and whatnot.
And did you also chat about more personal kinds of questions? For example, any hobbies, if the faculty had the hobbies on their website also?
Yeah, sometimes it can get personal. It's good icebreaker because it depends on the personality. You meet certain people, they are like very more kind of like they talk more, and then the other people they are like sometimes silent. And to avoid awkward silence, I have had one of these meetings where it was like there was like some silence for 1 or 2 minutes because it was like I ask question, they ask question, and then afterwards there is like, yeah, it seems to be a pause. Then I had to like go into this informal stuff like, hey, what about the weather today and stuff like this.
I see. Okay. And what kind of surprising questions did you receive?
The one that I remember the most is what is the one paper or one research work that you are not proud of or that you did not do well. So I had to like think a lot about because I mean I thought my all my were like strong enough, but at least I had to pick one that was not like that was the least strong or something. So that's something that caught me by surprise.
I see. Okay. And I mean, typically, multiple people work on a project. So did it sometimes happen to you that people would try to find out what your contribution to a paper or a project was? Did you receive any questions also in that direction?
I think for the program analysis part, it was mostly me with the supervisors. So there was not much collaboration going on with the other PhD students. But with the actually certified AI, once people see that you are first author, and I had some, then they know that like I was the primary contributor to the research. But then if there are papers where I'm second author, third author, then people ask about their role, and I was very honest about it in the sense that I said, hey, this is the work that I did. In some cases, the second author role was quite significant. In other cases, third author, fourth author, it was more of a helping role. So people do ask about this, and it's important that you are honest.
Makes sense. And did you also receive any questions about diversity?
Yes, in one of these interviews, they wanted to know a concrete plan of how I will be boost diversity. Uh, so also when I start at UIUC, they are not only looking for people that are good with research, they're also looking with leaders in the area that will also promote uh, other like diversity, inclusion, and in the department. So already this year, uh, we have been making offers to boost diversity in the department in terms of like PhD candidates.
And when giving the job talk, so I mean, people have questions for you. Did they come up during the job talk or at the end, or was it dependent on the institution?
Yeah, it depends on the institute. Some have policy that you ask only at the end, while others they can interrupt you in the middle. The thing about UIUC was curious because it was virtual. So what they told me was to upload the job talk online on YouTube beforehand. So people already had seen the job talk, and then when there was actually time for the job talk, I gave an overview of what was presented in the job talk, and then there were many questions about it. I would say that about the job talk, I, in those sessions, there were not many surprising questions. Actually, there was none that I can remember.
And for the other visits, did any of this, like if a person started to ask questions during the talk, did this influence the timing in some way that you had to skip some parts of your job talk?
Yeah, it can happen that sometimes the question answer lasts for 5-10 minutes. Then it's not possible to sometimes present everything because it's 1 hour window. sometimes it is strictly enforced. So then I had to cut off some part of the talk.
And after this, after such a virtual visit or after a visit in general, did you write thank you notes?
In my case, actually, I did not write any thank you notes. But uh, I remain in contact with my host in general.
And what about notes? Did you take any notes during the visits that you later
Yeah,
used?
yeah, I think it makes a good impression. So as I mentioned before, like people sometimes when they interview you, especially in this one-on-one meetings, they sometimes judge whether you can also bring some collaboration with them, right? So I remember one of these faculty at one of this institute, he got very excited about my research after hearing my job talk, and during the one-on-ones, he was like already listing the ways where we can collaborate. So it is important to like show interest also, and of course I was very interested talking with him, and then I also took down the notes on where we can collaborate and whatnot. In many cases, I talked about, especially the people, the senior people working in my area, I talked about, hey, I'm solving this problem, and then somebody suggests, hey, this algorithm could be useful. So then I just note down those algorithms and see if that can help with my research agenda.
Yeah, we chatted now a bit about interviewing, so let's continue with hearing back from the institution and then deciding. So what did you do when you received your first offer?
Yeah, so it was kind of because, as I mentioned before, it was in the middle of pandemic. So even if the department wanted to make offers in many cases, they had to be approved by dean. And then what happened in many cases was that the dean said that instead of making 6 offers, we will only make 1 or 2 offers this year. And then the dean wanted this kind of to be processed within a week or something. So I was given like a deadline of 1 week to decide what to do, because it was also pressure on the department that maybe in 1 week the situation changes, and then the school just decides that they don't want to hire anyone this year. So it was very important to process these applications in time. So once I got my first offer, I pinged other places to see what decisions that they have.
Oh, 1 week is really short.
Yes, yes.
And what were your decision factors?
So the most important decision factor for me was the quality of the students, because I think that also determines your success, or like your work as a faculty, or to get a tenure. So UIUC, I observed, was having the strongest students among the places I was having offers, and therefore uh, I went with that.
Were you also in a two-party situation?
No,
I
it
see.
was.
That made things easier, I guess.
Yes, yes.
So what did the startup package include? I mean, just roughly in terms of funding, for example, also.
So the startup package includes uh, amount of money to buy equipments for the group, and also I can fund one PhD student for 6 years or 2 for 3 years. I negotiated a bit about how much the money is allocated for buying the equipments, and in the end, it went well. We got what we wanted.
And how did you negotiate? Like, what was your strategy? Did you take another offer to do that, or?
Uh, yeah, I informed them about like I had other offers as well, uh, and then I also told them like what are the timelines of those offers, and what are the packages involved in those offers, to kind of uh, uh, mention where we are at. So important thing for me was again that I'm able to, in the beginning at least, start with decent, uh, in my case, 2 PhD students, and have funding for that, and also being able to acquire enough computing resources. We do certified AI. it's kind of GPU intensive, so it's important that we get good GPUs.
Makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
And you already mentioned before that you are on a H-1B visa. So how did the university handle like the visa situation? Did you receive any help from them, or was this something that you mainly did on your own?
The university has a department that handles this, so I had to provide them my details like passport and like previous visa and all these documents before, and then they handled it. It went very fast. The visa was approved in 2 weeks or something. Uh, the only thing is that I don't have the stamp. So for that, the US all that's nothing in control. That's not in the control of university. So for that, I have to go outside the US and get the stamp. With the current pandemic situation, it kind of makes it a bit complicated. So we will see what happens there.
Okay, sounds challenging. Yeah, I still have a couple of more general questions to wrap up.
Mm-hmm.
And there, as a first question, what was the most surprising part about the whole experience?
I was actually thinking, so when I had the phone interviews, right? So because they went into very detail about the plan for what I want to do next, I was also thinking that maybe they would ask a lot of questions about what I did or go into the details of what I did, but it was surprisingly quite high level. People were already kind of, I mean, I would say that they were confident about what I did. So many of the interviews, I was surprised that they were not as technically involved as they could be. Of course, the whole process can be tiring. Many times you meet 14 different people in the same day, and then it's like you have to connect with all these people, and yeah, it gets very tiring. So I remember from many of these interviews, I once I was done in the evening, the dinner, yeah, it was more informal and maybe a bit more relaxed. But after that, I just wanted to sleep. There was nothing else I wanted to do. So yeah, this part was quite challenging. And the surprising thing, of course, in my case, became the pandemic because I interviewed uh, when the pandemic was just started. So I was in the US, and then suddenly one day I hear that the travel to Europe is banned from the next day, right? So I really had to arrange the tickets for tomorrow, otherwise maybe I cannot go back. So that was quite surprising too.
Otherwise, you would have had a long-term vacation.
Yeah. And like some departments where I had like even with UIUC, I had visits later. They tried to schedule it earlier, but it was just not possible because I think when this guideline was published that the travel was barred, at that point, every university was already closed. They were canceling in-person visits. So also like, when you meet people in person, it's easier. These virtual interviews were even more tiring because you are sitting in the front of computer. When I interviewed at UIUC, I was in Switzerland. So this thing started, I think it is started, wait, let me see. It is started around afternoon for me and lasted till like 3 or 4 a.m. So that's like sitting in front of computer for 12 hours can be quite tiring.
And do you have any other experience that stuck with you? Any other anecdotes that you could tell?
At certain places, I saw that like I remember especially when this interview, it was like so when I made department health etc. Right, I have some standard questions I ask etc. But at one of these departments, it was like I ask questions, but I see that the department head is not very excited about what I am asking. Like I asked about his research, and I asked about like how can we collaborate. I asked about general question, but he was saying like ask me more, and I could not like figure out like what should I ask, like because whatever I ask, he answers in like 30 seconds and ask me more. And then I said, what about the education of the kids? So that seemed like a very interesting question. And then he said yes, and then he answered that question for like half an hour. So I think, in my opinion, that kind of shows that you want to settle in the city. And then I figured out that this is a very important question to ask. And then I also repeated it in the other interviews. And surprisingly, uh, it seems that this is the question that people like to hear.
Mhm. That's surprising. Good to know.
Yeah, yeah. Or like sometimes they are also asking about like settling down. They tell you like how is the education in the city. If you have a two body problem, which of course it was not in my case, but they suggested like at UIUC, they suggested that hey, how can they find a job in the university for the spouse or not, or like around the area.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think these kind of discussions is quite important too.
So during this interview season, did you get any other work done during this period?
It was quite busy. I was mostly focused on the interviews, and I did not do much besides that.
Do you also have any suggestions on what institutions could do to improve the interviewing process?
Uh, I think they are already doing quite quite a good job, and in the sense that they are open to give you feedback about what you did well and what you did not do well. Uh, I think in my experience, there is nothing that I can say about the visits that could have been done differently. Besides the usual case that some of the virtual visit could be physical, but I don't think that was in the hands of the university.
Yes, a final question. What suggestions can you share with future faculty candidates?
So yes, I can actually tell about this. I think I should have mentioned this before. At like certain places, they were saying that hey, we can sometimes be very nasty in the sense that sometimes the faculty candidates start crying or something because they ask just too tough questions. I think many of the departments they are looking for leaders, so it is very important to be confident in your work, right? So no need to be nervous at all, and you need to be uh, like like when sometimes what happens is that if you go to a very like I mean maybe top five, top two, top one place, you can get intimidated by seeing those big personalities in the crowd. I think it's very important to kind of be confident in your work, and even I seen at certain places they don't mind if you say that hey in the department maybe you did something that might be better than what has been done in the department, because that is actually something that that should make the department hire you. So nothing. You should not be very defensive when you go for these job talks, because that's considered as weakness. So you should be able to argue about the potential of your work over something else that some other person might be pushing. If you become too defensive, and that time they consider you weak. Another thing is that sometimes people mention the limitation of your work, as I mentioned before, that they say that, hey, there is this thing that does not work, you have to accept it. No research is perfect, no research direction is perfect. So I don't go around like saying that, hey, what I do is perfect. While if somebody starts talking that, hey, their research is perfect, I just also tell them, hey, look at these are the limitations of your work. So everything is kind of imperfect, and it's yeah, as I mentioned also before, that like making up stuff people realize when you don't know something and you are just making up like something that you don't know, so that actually leaves a very bad impression as well. So just don't do that. And it's also very important that you have a story to tell about your research, like how do you connect the different parts of your PhD into a big story, and how do you sell what you will do in the future and connect it with what you have done. So it cannot be that you say that I did X and now I want to do Y, while X and Y they don't have any overlap. And also, it's not good that you say that I did X and now I will do X prime, basically something incremental on top of that. So people want that you kind of do something new, but not completely new. And you should be confident in what you did. That's the main thing.
Okay, makes sense. And thanks a lot for all this great advice. Yeah, with that, thanks a lot for joining Gagandeep and all the best for your new position.
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure talking with you, and I really enjoyed answering all the questions. I hope some of my responses are useful.